field. Looking for Skattebo, and he gets him. Flag is down. Stiff arm. Helmet off. And multiple.
Pete does a sports show every week, folks, on WCCO and Odyssey Network.
Yep.
It's called the Sports Hub. My question is he a first-round pick, first of all?
You know, that's a great question, John. I think the one thing that holds me back from saying yes, he, by the way, great year, unbelievable what he was able to accomplish. It wasn't quite the Boise State type thing, but it was damn close. I mean, the guy, he did everything you'd want. And in this game, he was the reason that ASU actually had even a shot to get back into the game and turn it into a football game that goes to 2 overtimes before they get beat by Texas, right? I mean, Sarkisian was pulling his hair out. I think he made a lot of mistakes on some of the play calling too, John. He gave Arizona State an opportunity. But my one concern, if this kid is a first rounder, would be his 40 time. And I don't really like 40 times. And I've always felt like, you know what? Very few players ever run 40 yards in an entire, during a game at one spot, right? Now, wide receivers, sure. Defensive backs, sure. After that, why do we measure a 40-yard dash from an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman? You care about basically the 5 to 10 yards. That's what matters, right? And a running back, maybe there should be a 20-yard run if you're a running back to find out. I look at this kid. I think he's got all the heart in the world to play. He had a lot of arguments on the sideline, John. They were swearing at each other. He and the quarterback were going back and forth. The coaches, they had to settle each other down. I don't know what kind of juice they drink before the games, but those guys were definitely ready for something. But in any case, supposedly he runs like a 4.5 40, and that's fine. But from a speed perspective at the NFL level, John, I don't know if I see it for him to be a first-round pick. That's how I'd put it in the category, especially in a time where the NFL values running backs less and less and less every year. I don't know that he would be there in the first round. I don't know that he'd stand it. I like the kid a lot. I liked what he was able to show us. I think he really did show that he's an amazing running back against a really good Texas defense. They're not the best, and Texas has had some up and down games that they've had the opportunity to win. But, I'll tell you who's impressing me right now, Penn State. I look at that defense and how they play, John. They beat the living crap out of Ohio State, same thing. Ohio State, to your point, they took Oregon to the woodshed yesterday, and it got ugly for a while. Wide receiver, defensive back, absolutely lit them up. Their wide receiver is probably the most impressive kid I've seen since all the LSU wide receivers have been going in the NFL. I mean, he's big, he's strong, he's fast. They have a lot of talent out there. One thing I will say, I think that they figured out something that did work out really well this year with this 12-team deal, John, because when you look at the ratings, they're looking at, 11 million right now, average across the board. That ain't so bad. I tell you who'd like to have that, the NBA, the NHL, some of the other sports that don't get anything close to what the NFL does, college football. This is a big deal. And I think that they've done really, really a good job with who they picked for all these things. We had all the home games for the first round. Then you get to the quarters. Now we're going to get to the next. Well, once they get the Notre Dame game done, we'll find out exactly where everybody is in that tragic thing going on down there, all the investigation and everything else. But I think that kid is a heck of a running back, John. I'm concerned that the GMs are probably not going to pull the trigger on him in the first round.
Well, 16-point deficit in 7 minutes, folks, to take it to 2 overtimes. And Pete's right. Cam Skattebo was really the guy in terms of getting that done. Yeah. All right, Pete, what about the NFL? Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing right now in the NFL, if things are getting better or if the bad teams are getting worse.
Well, there is no doubt about one thing. I'll give you one stat that I had last week on our sports show. The Vikings, going into last weekend, had played 2 teams with a winning record that they played against. By the way, it was actually, the Detroit had a winning record. Green Bay has a winning record. And it's just amazing how many teams this year are pathetic. And why are they pathetic? because they've all drafted quarterbacks and it's been bust you across the board, or they went out and they just decided to pay quarterbacks way too much money and totally ruin their salary cap and everything else. So I think the GMs have really got to be checked if you're an owner of a football team to make sure that they're doing the right thing on how they're analyzing this, John, because there's a hell of a lot of teams out there that stink. I mean, let's be honest. One of them is your Chicago Bears. No offense to you on that, but, the coach is terrible. They fired him. His record was 14 and 32, by the way. Not very impressive. They have no offensive line. They got a quarterback, maybe. It looks to me like maybe more than maybe. He looks pretty damn good. He got a lot of sacks, John. So they need an offensive line on top of whatever else that they need for the Bears. New Orleans, sort of a similar thing where they've got a problem with the salary cap for what they're paying a lot of the players, or a couple of the players, I should say. That guy got fired. He's 18 and 25. The Jets, Salah's gone, and he was 20 and 36, John, in his run. And who's going to quarterback the Jets next year? I mean, is Rodgers going to be back? Who do they have? And they got rid of Sam Darnold a while back. He went to Carolina. Then he goes to the San Francisco. Then he comes over, and he's a hell of a quarterback this year for a team, Minnesota Vikings, who's right over here. Let me tell you something, John. A good, smart quarterback, which is what I give him credit for. I wasn't impressed going into this year that he was going to be able to do it. But when you look at the talent around him, they got the three, maybe as a group, best receivers in football. They got they got three tight ends, all of which are probably somewhere in the top 10 in the NFL. Offensive line, a little bit sketchy, but I'll tell you what, when you've got what he's got and you picked up your running back in Aaron, this kid is great. The receivers are great. The tight ends are great. And Sam Darnold suddenly looks like the second coming of I don't know who. But a lot of people here are wondering why he's not in the MVP voting, John. That's how high people are thinking of Sam Darnold right now.
Yeah, well, they should, Pete. And the guy that he replaced looked like a world beater. Cousins started off the year looking like he was going to be the man down there in Atlanta. And then he ended up getting replaced by Penix. And Penix brought him back. I mean, so I don't know. I tend to agree with you, although it is good to see. I love that Joe Burrow made the comeback that he did, and you kept saying it. You kept saying, don't count him out. His team sucks, but with his receivers, with Chase and with the receivers that guy's got, and Joe Burrow's knowledge of the game and his skills, he brought him back against all odds, against a pretty good Denver team with Bo Nix freaking looking like $1 million there, Pete. If they had a defense in Denver, maybe they'd be going to the playoffs.
Yeah, they got a problem on defense. I'll tell you, you may or may not follow your Bears as much, and I always joke about it. I know you played for the Bears, but I don't know that that's your favorite team or not. But I will say this, who's really the top of the heap right now? Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll, coming out of retirement, is really interested apparently in the Chicago Bears job. And I'll tell you what, Pete Carroll is the kind of guy with the tools that you've already got there, and all you really do need is an improvement in the offensive line, John. The Bears could get pretty damn interesting pretty fast if they do the right thing, because they've got receivers, they've got some running game on them, they've got a lot of the pieces to the puzzle. Now if they get an offensive line with Caleb, that kid, when he's got the time, I know he can scramble well, but when he's got the time, that's a guy who really can be a playmaker and could be pretty dangerous if he can get an offensive line.
Yep, and the Bears would have to open the checkbook too, Pete, which is something that the Bears rarely do.
They don't like to do that.
Yeah, they don't like to spend money. As I think it was Dick Butkus said, Mr. Hallis throws around nickels like they're manhole covers. And that ain't too far from the truth with the Hallises. And now that the McCaskies are the family that own them, that's why every day, Pete, every time they go on the field, the chant from the Bears faithful is, sell the team, sell the team.
It could happen.
It could.